Hello, welcome back to Stand By for Adventure. My name is John. I'm here today to talk about the Sentinels of Earth Prime, rather, which is a new game that was kickstarted a few years ago by Green Ronin in coordination with Greater Than Games, who created Sentinels of the Multiverse, which is what this game is based on. If you have ever played or know how to play Sentinels of the Multiverse, you know how to play Sentinels of Earth Prime. What I want to do here, I should disclose, in case it matters to anyone, I used to be the line developer for Mutants and Masterminds. I'm super familiar with all these characters. I had very little, basically nothing to do with this game, the card game. Because I'd left the company just as this was getting off the ground. I had recommended to Chris Pramus years earlier, that, hey, we should look at doing a card game or a board game or like all sorts of different stuff, because we had all this fantastic art for Mutants and Masterminds, and eventually this ended up being one of the things they came out with, which I'm super excited about. I think it's a fantastic idea. I really enjoyed Sentinels of the Multiverse, and I'm really looking forward to playing Sentinels of Earth Prime. If you don't know, Sentinels of Earth Prime is just the name that they're using for this release. The group of characters aren't actually the Sentinels. That's just to tie into the name of Sentinels of the Multiverse. Sorry, I had to check on my cat if he had escaped outside. And there is actually a group in the Mutants and Masterminds universe called the Sentinels, but they're based in a different city, Emerald City, which is sort of a Seattle, Portland kind of West Coast city. And the group that you're actually looking at here with these characters is the Freedom League. So in case that's a little bit confusing, that's the reason. There is this super nice webpage that I think must have been put together by Green Ronin, because they're really the ones printing, distributing, selling this version of the game. I'm sure there's some money being funneled back to Greater Than Games, because Christopher Bedell, the guy who created Sentinels of the Multiverse, did all the game design on this. So like I said, if you liked Sentinels of the Multiverse, you're going to like Sentinels of Earth Prime. And what I wanted to do is kind of go through the box that I just got this last week. It's nice and thick. So see, it's about the width of my face, or half of my face, and it has lots of stuff in it, which I will also attempt to get over here. So this is the base game with the 4 additional add-ons that you could get and that are available right now. And in fact, if we look down on this page, it will show us the list of the box contents. Don't really need to go through all of that. But the other things it has are an expansion pack for a character named Eldritch, who's sort of like a Doctor Strange equivalent. Lantern Jack, who probably is almost like a Sandman-like character if Sandman were on Earth. I'm trying to think who he would actually be similar to. He's kind of a Ghost Rider sort of character, he is literally a ghost. Magical. Malador the Mystic. Sorry, those first 2 were both heroes. Malador the Mystic is one of the villain packs that's available. Subterra is one of the locations, so the environments that you can that are part of the game, and then there's the core game itself. They wisely also include on this page a link back to where this Earth Prime comes from, what it means, where you can find out more. If you love superheroes anywhere near as much as I do, you should absolutely check out Mutants and Masterminds. It's a super fun game based on 3rd edition D&D, but vastly changed, very, very different. But if you're familiar with D&D, it uses a D20, and it only uses a D20. All you need to do is have a D20, a pencil, a piece of paper, and your character, and you're good to go. and the rule books, all that sort of good stuff. But there's all sorts of fantastic books out for this series. It's been around for 20 years. I'm talking about the role-playing game Mutants and Masterminds, and it's a fantastic game. You should check it out if you like superheroes at all. The other thing on this webpage is it gives you the backgrounds of all of these different characters. So if you are not familiar with them, you can get a little bit of an idea of what they're like. What I wanted to do, they also do the same thing for the villains. The villains are Argo, who is a kind of an Ultron type. He's an adaptable android with artificial intelligence. There is Hades, who is in fact, in theory, the real god Hades, and he's very much a deal maker and trying to cause problems on Earth. The Metamind, who is the leader of the Groo, absolutely a takeoff on like the Skrulls from the Marvel Universe and their Supreme Intelligence. If you're familiar with the Supreme Intelligence, I guess it was featured in the Captain Marvel movie. Omega, who is sort of a dark side-like character who is literally looking to take over all of creation and crush it under his boot. And then Malador the Mystic is the expansion pack, which is a mystical villain, obviously. There is also a link to how to play Sentinels of the Multiverse. I am not going to go over how to play the game. What I wanted to do was do a walkthrough on the characters themselves. And so I've got them all here. I'm going to go pretty quickly. I'll also show you what comes in this box. There's one pack here of all the villain cards, and these are kind of the oversized ones that allow you to keep track of their hit points, how much damage they've taken over the course of the game, which face they are on, depending on if they've been defeated in one form or have transformed to another form. There's tokens. I've already punched out all the tokens, and they are in little baggies here. There's not a ton of them. There's only 3 or 4 sheets of punch outs, and they're all very clear, very colorful, very easy to read. Really pretty excellent graphic design and layout and design and all that sort of good stuff for this whole product. I'm friends with a lot of the people at Green Earnings, so I know all their names. So if I mention their names, I will try to tell you exactly who they are. Hal Mangold is one of the guys involved. Matt Sturm, which was a name I was surprised to see on there, just because I've known him a long time and didn't know he even did graphic design layout for gaming products. But hey, I'm happy to see it. And James Dawsey, who has his own publishing company, which of course, off the top of my head right now, I can't think of, but he's released some really fantastic Mutants and Masterminds products over the years. And he was hired as the art director for this because every single card has a piece of art on it, and it took a lot of work to get this made. I think people love games. They don't really understand exactly how much work goes into making them. And I'm sure James was busy for a long, long time on this project. And it took a long time to get done because it was kickstarted before the pandemic. And just as the pandemic was starting, it was starting to go into production and starting to be shipped. And it just got delayed and delayed and delayed. It was just awful and way more expensive than it needed to be because of the change of prices in shipping containers and kind of a nightmare. So when this finally showed up just 2-3 days ago, I was very, very excited, and I can't wait to sit down and play this. So let's go through some of the characters. I've got all of them here. Bowman, I'm going to go quick because I want to give just a really fast overview of what these cards are like, what these characters are like, so that if you're on the fence about if you want to pick this up, I want to give you a clue of what you're going to see in the box. Bowman is one of the heroes. He is a Green Arrow, Hawkeye type character, and from looking through the deck, one of the nice things they do on these cards is they have a little indicator right here that it's either a 1, 2, or 3. The 1 is in green, the 2 is in yellow, and the 3 is in red. And it indicates sort of the complexity of that character. And I'll make sure to point those out on each of these. So Bowman, And I'm going in order. So with the heroes, I'll start with the rank 1 heroes. And Bowman is a kind of rank 1 complexity. Should be pretty straightforward. I actually think he's a really good character. He has a lot to do with... one thing I won't really mention, unless it's specifically important, is all the characters can do damage. It just depends on how much damage they do. Bowman is interesting because he has trick arrows. He's able to do many different types of damage, which is a nice bit of flexibility that people might like. He also has some pretty cool things that allow him to prevent damage from being dealt by wrapping people up in a bola arrow, or able to, let's see, play one card, use one power, draw one card in any order. So he does have some ability to refill his hand, which is very important because it does. This deck should feel like you're pulling out something new every turn and shooting it and firing it, and so you want to always be having cards, and the deck is built to make sure that you will have those cards. It's pretty fun. I think for any new player or anybody who wants to feel like they're actually doing something, Bowman is a great option. Really looking forward to playing him, even though he's a difficulty 1 character. Same thing for Johnny Rocket. Johnny Rocket is kind of like the Flash. Interestingly, Johnny Rocket is the creator of Mutants and Masterminds. That is his character, Johnny Rocket. Johnny Rocket is, as a speedster, they needed to come up with a different way for him to feel compared to somebody like Tachyon, who is in the Sentinels of the Multiverse game. And I think they did that. This is pretty interesting in that they have, the Johnny Rocket deck has cards that allow you to draw cards, discard cards, put cards underneath, I think. Draw 2 cards, then play a card. So it's going to be a deck that gives you access to many, many cards, and you're going to be funneling through things quickly. They also do some really neat stuff that allows him to go into other people's decks to retrieve an item as if he is running away to go get some important piece of equipment and bringing it back to you. So if you're playing with Bowman and you really need Bowman next turn to have his acid arrow, Johnny can go get that arrow out of Bowman's deck and give it to that player. So some pretty interesting stuff. He does a fair amount of... he's got some cards that do area of effect attacks, so which I mean like affects a bunch of different characters at once. He can do some pretty serious damage, and he looks also like a very fun offensive / support character that can do some pretty surprising things that I think will come in useful during any game of Sentinels of Earth Prime. And I also think he would be a fantastic option for anybody to play, and I think he might be one of the go-tos in this set just because he offers so many different options. Star Knight is the next character. Star Knight is sort of a Rom the Space Knight character, but with much more of a, I would say, more of a Marvel feel, almost like a Captain Marvel kind of character. In this version, the character is pretty interesting in terms of how it works. I'm trying to think here. Let's see. What she does a lot is also draws cards and discards them, and much more specialized with regards to manipulating your discard pile and your deck itself. So you're able to go through your deck, you're able to discard cards, you're able to manipulate it to put things where you want them to be. So, for instance, combat recharge, discard, and it's a one shot, so you just play this card and it's done. Discard the top card of your deck, draw 2 cards, Starknight gains 3 hit points. So, some really pretty nice effects, especially if you already know what's on top of your deck and you want to get rid of it for whatever reason because you want to get to whatever's next. When this card is destroyed, draw up to 3 cards. So, that's also very, very cool, and it has another effect too. So, there's all sorts of pretty cool effects for her. I think she's going to be pretty interesting to play as well. I'm not sure if she's on the top of my list. I think the Johnny Rocket and Bowman are both a little more interesting. Thirdly, we have Lady Liberty, who is sort of a Donna Troy, Wonder Woman, Wonder Girl type character. She's invested with the spirit of liberty and very, very cool. There's 2 versions of this character. In fact, all the heroes have 2 different hero cards that have slightly different effects, but in her case, she's actually 2 different characters. This one is the most recent retiree of the Lady Liberty legacy, and this character is the new Lady Liberty, who is a trans woman, which really just is a woman, and they have different powers, and she is a fantastic support character. The fewer hit points she has, the more powerful she is, and the more of a buff she provides to everybody else. I think she could have a huge role in letting you come from behind and just absolutely destroy the bad guys when it looks like they're gonna win. I'm really looking forward to see how she plays, because she's also really flexible. She has some healing ability. She's able to buff all of her friends and like rallying cry, that sort of thing. She's also considered a rank 1 character, so not very complicated, but I think she has fantastic effects. Captain Thunder is kind of the Superman. He's the big, cool, like, truth, justice, that sort of thing. And he is easily the big damage dealer of the most of these rank 1 characters. He can do some great stuff. He deals lots of lightning damage. Trying to think, he does automatic damage to people. He can like surround himself in an electrical field. Heals characters a little bit, lets them draw cards. It has a lot of really great effects, and is resistant to damage in some instances. Again, it depends on what cards you get out. I think he's going to be a really good power player, especially if you're looking to use the more basic characters, meaning the rank 1 characters that aren't quite as complex as some of the others, and you want to have somebody who can both deal and take damage. As a collection, these first, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 characters would be fantastic to play as a group. All of the most basic level characters. Level 2, so you can see the little yellow 2 there, up in the corner there, is Siren. Siren is kind of like Storm from the X-Men, very much a weather controller. Really, she's water-based. Hence Siren and all the water motif that she has going on in her stuff. But she does control the weather as well, and she does a lot of things with, and this shouldn't be surprising, with the environment deck. So if you're familiar with the game, environments are one of the decks that are on the table, and it has an effect on what's going on in the game. They can be positive effects, they can be negative effects, but there's always some kind of effect that's going to happen. She can help you manipulate what those effects are going to be, and that's also fantastically useful. She also does tons of area of effect of things, like everybody takes one, like all villains take 1 point of electrical damage or lightning damage, and does have some ability to help people recharge their hands, recover some hit points, but she's really very much about controlling the environment and making sure things are kind of on your side with regards to the environment. Very, very cool. Dr. Metropolis, probably my favorite character. He is sort of a Jack Hawksmoor character from the. Yep, I'm gonna forget the name. No, not the Ultimates. Nope. Stormfront, Stormwatch. Um, and Stormwatch, and what was the follow up to that? I can't remember. Anyway, he is basically a reborn person who is a city elemental. That's the best way to put it. So think of Swamp Thing, except Dr. Manhattan was born, or Dr. Metropolis was born in a city, and so he can manipulate the city, he can sense things throughout the city, he can phase through buildings, all sorts of cool stuff. And he is very much about locations. So he has cards that he can actually put out that are physical things that appear in the world and attack the bad guys. So in this case, a giant fist is formed out of concrete and has 5 hit points and will be around and do this effect for the entire time it's around. Here's another one. A crane that attacks you, and it has 5 hit points, and as soon as those hit points are gone, the crane goes away. But he can have multiples of these things up, and they can all be doing damage, at least I think. Does it say destroy the others? At the end of the turn, nope. So you could have multiples of these up, and every round they deal damage to other people, and then they deal 1 point to themselves, or some number of points to themselves, and so it will, if it's not attacked, it will eventually go away anyway. But a very, very cool effect, and it's very in keeping with what Dr. Metropolis is about. He's very good at dealing damage, he's very good at checking things out. Draw 3 cards, you may play 1 card. Let's see. Power, reveal the top 3 cards of your deck. Put each location revealed this way into play. Discard the other revealed cards. So if you get a good draw on that, of drawing the top 3 cards, you could absolutely get 3 locations that then just suddenly become 3 different cards on the board that are doing damage to your opponents over however long they're on the board. Really a cool character, and I like the way they came up with his mechanics for the game itself. Looking forward to playing him too. I just absolutely think he's fantastic. Let's see here. Next is the Raven. The Raven is sort of like Batman, or Batgirl and Batwoman in this case. And there's a long history of there being a Raven character, and in fact this is, I think it's Cassie Summers, maybe it's Callie Summers, who is the daughter of the original Raven and was the Raven for a long time, and now she, and this is in the fiction of the Mutants and Masterminds world, has been replaced by this guy who was a member of sort of like the Teen Titans kind of version of a team in the Mutants and Masterminds setting, who was a character named Elite. She is, as you might expect, has a bunch of gadgets, is an investigator, also has some really neat effects that allow her to reduce the amount of damage dealt, is able to, let's see here, deals up to 2 damage. She can affect multiple people at once. She can look at some of the cards in her deck and kind of manipulate that a little bit. Very, very flexible, and I think is just sort of a step up from the Bowman in terms of what she's capable of doing, and so she's one of those rank 2 characters in terms of complexity, whereas Bowman is a rank 1 character. Next, we have Daedalus. Daedalus is, in fact, the inventor from Greek-Roman mythology. I don't remember exactly. But Daedalus, father of Icarus, and he is immortal, so Hades and he don't get along. And he's the Iron Man inventor type, but also has connections to the gods, so it's sort of a really kind of a cool character in that he has magic connections and tech connections, and he's been around forever. He has a really funky way. Oh, and he is the first level 3 character here, so he is a little more complicated, and you will quickly learn that as you read through his cards. So he has a bunch of gravity influence powers, and the way these are written, if you have 7 or more cards in hand, Daedalus deals himself 4 fire damage and then destroy this card. Okay, so that gets rid of that. But then Daedalus is immune to damage from environment cards. At the start of your turn, either draw 1 card or destroy this card. So he is able to get more cards into his hand, more cards into his hand, more cards into his hand, but the more cards he has, the more danger he runs into of taking damage. So he wants to be able to get cards in hand, so he has as many resources as he can, but not so many that it triggers that fail-safe upper level of his ability to kind of contain that power. And in fact, one of the cards that there are 2 of here in the deck is the Archimedes failsafe. Discard all but 4 cards in your hand. So you get to choose between all the cards you have in your hand and discard down to 7 or discard down to 4, so you don't trigger those environmental effects that would cause you to take damage and destroy the card that you already have on the board that's giving you some other beneficial effect. He has a number, like 3, 4, 5 different cards like that it matters how many cards you have in hand, and if you have X number or higher, it has some negative effect and then goes away. But if you can manipulate your hand size to stay under that, he just gets really tough because he keeps adding these things to the board. He does really good damage, very, very interesting character, and he's got a bunch of stuff going on that I think would be a lot of fun to play, especially if you are looking for a bit more of a challenge when it comes to playing the game and what the characters are capable of. Let me just slot all these back into the box here. The box is very nice. I should also point out what I was showing you guys was each of these decks, when you open the box, is sealed individually, at least for the heroes. And then there's another box or another little sealed package that contains these dividers, and they just go behind. And you can see the dividers are in fact a little bit bigger than the cards themselves, and they fit in the box, and it's really useful. And it also shows you right on the divider the difficulty level of that character, so you can keep the most basic characters grouped together or mix them up however you want, but you can still find the ones that are easier to use if you've got some new players or want to have a little more lighter, less thinky game, because some of these do get pretty involved. We're now in the second trough of cards here, and this is Pseudo. Pseudo is an alien, think Martian Manhunter, shape changer, turn invisible, stretchy, able to manipulate his body to like grow spikes and huge muscular arms and armor, and also very, very interesting. He has a bunch of cards that are called shapes. So you can see in the middle of the card there's what does it say? Ongoing, shape limited, and he has these shapes. And the shapes give him some kind of ability. This card is the barbed spines I was talking about. So when this card enters play, Pseudo deals each non-hero target 1 projectile damage. So he shoots out these quills like a porcupine. Then destroy each shape other than this one. So if he has any other shapes out, he has changed shape, so that other shape goes away and he's now in this shape. And if he changes shape again, this shape will go away and be replaced by the other one. Each time Pseudo is dealt damage by a non-hero target, he deals that target 2 melee damage. So again, he'd be somebody you'd want to have getting attacked, especially by minions who are a little bit weaker, and 2 points of damage can be pretty significant to them. He gets huge arms. He gets armor. He can do his Groo Battle Shifter form. which isn't actually a shape, but it enhances all the shapes. So it allows them to do more damage. And what else does it do here? You may play one shape. Okay, so it lets you do that. So if you wanted to, you could replace a shape or put a new shape into play when you play this. And then its power is until the end of this turn, increase damage dealt by pseudo by 1, and you may play one shape. So super useful, because this allows you to not only play this and play a shape so that you're able to do more damage, but every round you can activate that power if you have a new shape that you want to put out and just put it out. And that doesn't then cost towards your number of cards that you've played, because it's an action from this power. Super, super cool stuff. Malleable flesh. He does have some psychic defenses and offenses, which are pretty cool, because between all the different characters you get access to basically all the different damage types, which is definitely a good thing. Super, super neat character. Once again, I can see how playing him would be very different than all the other characters, because you are literally changing shape to adapt to what's going on in the game. And again, of course, that's kind of determined by what cards you happen to have in your hand, but it's going to be pretty fun. Lantern Jack is the first of the expansion options that are available. Lantern Jack is pretty damn cool looking, very unlike the spandex wearing super people you normally see. This guy looks like Paul Revere, you know, with his lantern. And again, two versions of the character. He has something neat going on. He is a rank 3 character, and you can see he only has 15 hit points or 13 hit points, and that's because pretty much everything he does has an effect and then heals him 2 hit points. And it doesn't just heal him 2 hit points, it increases his hit points even above what would normally be his maximum. So despite the fact that he starts at 13 or 15 hit points, which is not very many, most of the heroes have something like in the 20s or even 30, every action he takes does some damage, heals him, does some damage, heals him, does some damage, heals him. So he could potentially get a ton of hit points if he's able to play a bunch of cards and doesn't get attacked. And I think his staying power is going to be really obnoxious, at least assuming if there was a GM to this game, it would be obnoxious. But I think he's going to be one of the characters to beat. He also does infernal damage and psychic damage, I forget, but he has radiant damage, that was it. So 2 of the rarer damage types, and some very, very cool effects for him too that work really well with the rest of the team. Even though he's more of a solo character, I kind of doubt you'd be playing this game solo. Eldritch is another one of the expansions. He is a Complexity 3 character, and he is a Complexity 3 character because he basically comes with his own little mini game, and I'm really curious to try this out. So when you play him, you get spells, and you can play these spells out on the table, and then the spells can be used if there are a certain number of tokens on that card, and the cards that you play say put 2 tokens on a spell, and then the spell might say remove 3 tokens to have this effect. And you can have multiple spells out. You can destroy spells, and you can move their tokens from one spell to another to power yourself up to get access to different abilities. And holy crap, I think it's going to be either super fiddly and annoying, which I hope isn't the case, or it's going to be really a neat little resource mini game that I think a lot of people are probably going to like, because it's so different than almost anything else in the game. It really looks neat. And in fact, there is one of the villains is sort of similar to him in that it does the same sort of thing with these tokens and this little mini game. Argo, the ultimate android, is a level 1 villain, so not super complicated. He is a big beatstick, and he is able to do damage. He is able to adapt to attacks and defenses. He is capable of taking on the entire team all by himself because that's how he was built. He does lots of damage, he affects lots of people, and I think he is probably the first one, if you're playing this for the first time, that you'll want to use him. And he is, in fact, the only level 1 villain. All the other villains are 2 or 3. So he's big beatstick and should be still pretty fun to play against, especially as you're getting to know the game. Hades, we have mentioned. This is him in his office work form. Hades is a big, tough, bad guy, and he also has kind of poses an interesting challenge because all of his cards, as they come up, are sort of like tempting offers. So, puts something out and says, hey, any hero can draw 2 cards, which is a good thing. But any hero that draws a card suffers some damage or has some effect happen. And every hero can gain up to 3 hit points or 5 hit points, whatever it is, it's on the card. But any hero who does has to discard a card or something like that. So there's these... It's this interesting sort of give and take of, okay, I need some resources in order to fight back, but if I get this resource from Hades, I'm going to end up paying for it, quite literally. And I think he's probably going to be super interesting to play against. It just sounds so cool. The Metamind, who is the leader of the Groo, also a level 2 villain. And this character has a lot to do with, you're not really fighting the Metamind, you are fighting the Metamind and all of its followers, which is the alien race of the Groo, which again are kind of like the Skrulls. They're shape changers, they can do funky stuff. Pseudo is a renegade Groo, and who went off and became a hero. But the Metamind is interesting because he's actually able to sort of take over the heroes and have them deal damage to other heroes. It also is able to call in reinforcements in the form of these other Groo, and so you see he calls in a Groo Brute, or he calls in some Groo Warriors, a Groo Drone. Here we go. And the Groo Drone looks like a big glass cannon, so a small little guy with a huge gun. And he is a standalone character, so you can see he's got 3 hit points. He sits on the board and exists until these 3 hit points go away, and as long as he exists, this happens every round. So you want to target them, and that distracts you from then targeting the Metamind, who is really the ultimate thing you want to take out. Here's the Metagroo, who is basically the super Skrull. He has all sorts of superpowers and is able to take on a whole team by himself. He has 6. I wouldn't be surprised if we see him as a standalone card, a standalone deck at some point too. And it would probably be very similar in some ways to the way Argo works in this set as a villain. But he has 6 hit points and has a big box of text that tells you what happens every round when he's out. The Metamind's imperative lets all the villains do extra damage. Metamorph Infiltrator is another standalone character that messes with your side, meaning the good guys. Mind-Linked Slave, when this card... at the end of the villain turn, this card deals each hero target 1 psychic damage. And that is just, again, a character. You can see the 2 hit points there. And it sits on the board and just goes ping, 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 until somebody takes it out and wastes their action to get rid of that thing so that you don't need to worry about taking that ping of damage every round. and you can instead concentrate on the Metagroo, the Metamind, is what I'm trying to say. Really, really super interesting stuff again. Looking forward to playing that too, because it's sort of an alien invasion kind of feel. And I don't know if I mentioned, but that was a level 2 complexity character. Malador the Mystic is the next one. The man with the golden skull. Malador is a complexity 3 character. Malador is very, and this is one of the expansions as well. Malador is interesting because he's very much like, who did I say just a minute ago that you have the little mini game? Eldritch. You've got the little mini game with Malador too, which makes sense because he's also a spellcaster, and the idea is you have this card called the Golden Mask, and every round you are putting tokens, or depending on what comes up in your cards, you're putting tokens onto that mask, and then you can remove tokens from the mask in order to power your abilities. Gonna be super powerful. He has some followers that are pretty tough. So here's 8 hit point Hound of Karkratos, and it's able to do some pretty serious damage, 3 melee damage, and again, you're sort of manipulating things with these tokens that get moved around from card to card and to activate certain abilities. Also going to be a super interesting fight, I'm sure, with them. The last villain that's currently available is Omega. Omega. He is complexity 3, and he is the big bad guy from this setting. If anybody could be said to be the bad guy. He wants to destroy or take over everything. He has tried to invade Earth in the past. He's just a bad guy. He has all sorts of followers. Think something like Darkseid and his all the forces from Apocalypse, right? So here is his Annihilists, which is a group of people who have been brought up sort of under his purview, and they are as twisted as him, even though they're kind of normal people who have just been manipulated and misinformed about everything, and they want what he wants because that's how it goes. This is super interesting, probably the coolest card in his deck. So this is the Augmentation Portal. It has 20 hit points, so this thing will be a threat when it comes out. There is only one of them in his deck, and it's going to be around for a while. And what it does is increases the damage dealt by minions by 1. So all of his minions that come up are going to be doing more damage to everybody, and it reduces damage dealt to minions by 1. So not only are they going to do more damage, they're going to stick around longer. So 20 hit points, and that card is going to hurt. And people are going to have to pay attention to it, because take a couple of rounds now to take out that big Augmentation Portal, and that will pay off for you later on. He has these things called breaches. So let's see. A character may deal themselves 3 fire damage. If they are dealt damage this way, destroy 1 breach. And here's another breach. So the Augmentation Portal was a breach, by the way. And this destabilizing incursion is another breach. Increased damage dealt by Omega by 1, and it also has 20 hit points. So, and just a single one of these cards. But imagine if you have both of those 20 hit point cards sitting out, because they can be. Holy cow, you're going to be hurting fast, because not only is Omega doing more damage, but his minions are doing more damage and taking less damage. Pretty bad news. All sorts of cool stuff in here too. You also have Omega drones, which are some more followers or minions that can be on the board. There are quite a few of those. 1, 2, 3, 4 of those. Here's another breach, the Reality Bleed. Each time a player uses a power, Omega deals their hero character 1 energy damage. Again, 20 hit points on that. So it's going to be around for a long time. Another breach, with 20 hit points. Another breach with 20 hit points. So, another breach with 20 hit points. So, Terminus Drain, Time Loop Portal, Unleashed Entropy is just a one-shot. That's not a breach. Zone of Frailty. Damage dealt by Omega is irreducible. So, you're not going to be able to take less damage than he is doing. Like, you can't reduce it in any way. And it could also potentially be increased still, but it can't be reduced. Then, the final thing is, we've covered heroes, we've covered villains, and now we have the locations like the cities. And let's see, the 4 or 5 I have here are Freedom City, which is the main, one of the 2 main cities in Mutants and Masterminds, Earth Prime. Farside City, which is on the moon and is where the I can't remember what their name is, but sort of like the Inhumans live on the moon in Marvel. It's very much the same sort of thing. It's on purpose, don't worry. Then there's the Terminus, which is where Omega is from. And there is Tartarus, which is connected to Hades. And there is Subterra, which is underground. So think the Underdark or Warlord, the old comic book, that sort of thing. That's kind of the feeling for that. And each of the cities, or each of the locations, environments, has their own sorts of effects. I actually really think Freedom City is kind of interesting, and I also recommend it as what you use in your first game, because the effects in it seem generally pretty positive, or at least not super negative. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I mean, it's a bright metropolis-like city, so it kind of makes sense that it would kind of be on the hero's side. It's not actively working against them, although there are still some challenges that can come up in this Freedom City environment. Let's see here. Next was Farside City. Farside City has some cool stuff because there are things like crater apes, and it's a weird combination of science fiction and psionic and alien. So pretty cool stuff going on there. And then you've got things like the Farside Manufactory, which is what does it say actually? It is a preserver artifact with 8 hit points, and it will continue to do something every turn if you don't stop it. Looks very interesting. There's a bad guy in here named Lady Lunar. She is a psychic. Her little quote on the bottom is, "I am the rightful ruler, not by birth, but by power." And she's one of the kind of big focuses of this deck in terms of people getting mind controlled and attacking you and things going on that you wouldn't expect, and it also looks kind of interesting. And you can combine these with any combination of hero, villain, and location. So you could have some pretty funky things going on, like Hades fighting in Farside City on the moon against a really random collection of heroes, and it would still be very, very cool. The Terminus, and you can see the definite Jack Kirby influences on this setting, and why I mentioned Darkseid when I was talking about Omega. And this also has all sorts of minions. What is this? Nihilur Coilbound. So there's a 2 hit point minion that when this card is destroyed, put 1 breach from the villain or environment trash into play. So this would be a villain that or a minion that you don't necessarily want to get rid of, even though it has a negative effect on you on the first part of the card. Each breach regains 2 hit points. If no hit point is regained this way, play the top card of the environment deck. Oh, yeah, this is a terrible card. So this is going to really, if you're using this in conjunction with Omega, terrible. You're going to have a hard time playing this deck. Nihilur Soul Furnace is another 20-point breach. that has an effect. Each time the environment target, or an environment target is destroyed, each hero target deals itself 1 psychic damage and each minion regains 2 hit points. So again, pinging away at you and helping the minions get better and better. There's another breach for 20 hit points. Here's an Omega Breacher, which is a minion with 8 hit points. Also probably has some effect on breaches. Another minion with 6 hit points, another minion with 4 hit points, another minion with 4 hit points. So yeah, you're going to be fighting a lot of bad guys when you go to the Terminus. Tartarus. Ooh, it looks evil. That's because it's on another plane. Hey, we even have Charon, or Charon, depending on how you pronounce it. 9 hit point minion. Spirit, rather, I guess this says. That has some effects. Here's another hoplite sort of undead warrior with 3 hit points that will be out on the board and attacking you. There are 3 of those in the deck. There are these torment cards that can come into play that also have some funky effects. So here's the Mountain of Sisyphus is a torment. When this card enters play, destroy all other torments, so there can only be 1 out at a time. Each time a target is destroyed, reduce damage dealt to spirits by 1 until the start of the environment turn. So all of the minions in this deck are spirits, and so they take less damage. And there are a bunch more of these sorts of torment cards. There's also, here's a Skeletal Phalanx, which is a spirit minion sort of card with 7 hit points, and every round they're just going to continue to do damage to you. So pretty cool and dangerous stuff again, and if you're using it with Hades, it's probably that much more powerful and effective. Subterra, again, the Underdark, the Underworld, the down below, the actual physically underneath the earth, unless it like crosses over into another dimension or something. And this is really sort of an environment filled with all sorts of crazy things you might not expect. So a crystal passage that does damage to you and increases the damage you can deal, all damage that's dealt. Sulfur vents. So here's the crystal passage. I'll show you the picture there. So the damage is bouncing around the walls. Sulfur vent. Again, you're underground, so what do you know? Maybe some volcanic activity lets you take some toxic damage. Narrow crevice. Reduce damage dealt by villain targets by 1. Oh, okay. So it does other things, but it does lower their damage. There's a lost city, the Lost Agartha, which you should look up the name Agartha on the internet to find out that it was actually a city, and we just co-opted it for this. When this card comes into play, destroy all other environment cards. At the end of the environment turn, play the top card of each deck in turn order, starting with the villain deck. So that basically speeds up the villain deck, the environment deck, that sort of thing, and could be very dangerous. Sorceress Priest with 8 hit points. Another minion with 6 hit points, another minion with 3 hit points, another minion with 5 hit points. So you're going to have plenty of things to fight against. And that's kind of the point of these environment decks, so that the villains don't need to have their followers with them necessarily. The followers are kind of part of the environment, and then obviously if there are other bad guys in a villain's deck, they can summon them up too. I already pointed out the tokens, but I want to show off the box here because it was also kind of interesting. I know I showed these before too, but these are the large villain cards that allow you to more easily see everything and track everything. It's just all the villains that you see here. So one thing that I thought was kind of funky about this box, and again, I just want to show this off. So it comes with two big gutters, right? And then this space up here. And when this box came, I have to take these out without spilling the cards all over the place. When this box came, it was put together in such a way that I thought, oh, how clever. They made this box so you can fold this section down so it's as deep as these, but it's not actually built to do that. So when it first came, these two sections were empty, just like they look, you know, with the components and stuff. But this was actually higher, so they had like a roof on this section of the box, or a higher base. And basically, it was, instead of being the way I just showed you, it was kind of standing up. So it was created like a more of a shelf inside the box, which when I'd taken everything out, I couldn't actually put back in because I had, instead of a bunch of flat things of plastic, I had these bags. And so what I did is cut off the side that was closest to the, boy, this camera thing is annoying, that was closest to here, and you can see it's kind of a rough cut. And then I just folded everything so that it would fit inside here and still hold everything I wanted it to. And it works great. I'm able to put everything back in there, so don't get frustrated if you pick this up. You can just fold it, so these are all the same depth. You might just have to cut this unless you can figure out a way to fold it. I couldn't. And everything will fit just fine. Really nice, solid box, well printed, has a good, you can kind of hear the texture on it. I think it's going to stand up really well. It has the 4 little expansions. I hope there's going to be more. There's certainly room for it. Obviously, Sentinels of the Multiverse has tons and tons and tons of expansions. I would love it if Green Ronin and Greater Than Games could do more releases for this, whether it's in a larger format like this or these smaller one-off expansion packs, because I think you can easily add to this game, obviously, because they did it in Sentinels of the Multiverse as well. And yeah, I'm looking forward to more. I love the Mutants and Masterminds artwork. The stuff on this, I find it was done, I think, almost exclusively. I didn't point out the rulebook, but there is a nice color rulebook. Very well, relatively short, so not very thin. And like I said, color throughout. It shows you all of the characters here in the back and gives you the rundown, same information that's on the website, I'm sure. And then the layout itself, very clear, very easy to read. I'm sure, well, I'm not sure if Matt Sturm did the layout on this or if Hal did. I'm sure I can look at the back and see. But they have a lot of experience laying out rules, and they understand rules, and they play games, and so I have no fear that these rules, the layout of these rules should be very understandable and easy to follow. But if you already know how to play the game, you probably don't have to worry about it. It covers all sorts of information in here. It gives examples of everything, and looks like it's going to be just fantastic. I can't wait to play this. The art in this was done, let's see, the cover artwork was done by Conceptopolis, and you may have heard of Conceptopolis. It's an art house that does freelance work for all sorts of people. They've even done like their own comic books, I think, for Image. But they do work for tons of people. Wizards of the Coast, I know Green Ronin has used them multiple times for a lot of their artwork. And a new company that I haven't really heard of before is this Octographics, and they did all the card and rulebook art. That's a little bit of a bummer to me because there was already so much fantastic artwork from people like Sean Isaacs, and who has gone on to work on some of the X-Men books. I forget what else he's worked on. Alberto Fauché, who I think is Italian. Please be right about that. Or maybe he's Spanish? I don't know. But Alberto Fauché, who has gone on to also do some of the X books, and Dan Dare from a few years ago, but he's been on X books for a while now. Ramon Perez, who was an early contributor, and in fact, if you look at the website here, the pictures right there, actually, yeah, the pictures of Captain Thunder, Lady Liberty, and Johnny Rocket right here are all done by Ramon Perez, who's gone on to become an Eisner Award-winning artist, and this artwork is from years and years ago, but it still stands up. It's just fantastic. I love his stuff, and I would have loved to have seen more actual artwork from Mutants and Masterminds in this game, but I also completely understand that they wanted it to look consistent and have an internal consistency to the entire thing. So it's 6 of one, half dozen of another. It doesn't matter. I think the game is going to be fantastic. I love what they did to interpret these characters for this. I hope you enjoy this. I hope you enjoy the game, and I hope you found this review unboxing useful. I mostly just wanted to give an overview, like I said, of the characters, so that if you are on the fence about this, to see if it sounds like it's interesting to you. If I weren't automatically going to back this, which I did, there was no question that I wasn't going to get this. There was no question I was going to get this. Whatever. That this has been useful to you to find out, like, okay, that sounds interesting. Like, I like the way this hero sounds. I like the way that hero sounds. This villain. That's what I wanted to do, because if I hadn't picked this up and I saw this, I would want it. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun to play, and I can't wait to do it. And I know the game is good. I should also comment a little bit on the game. The text on the game has always bothered me. There are things about it that are not written out or templated as well as a game like Magic the Gathering, which is sort of the gold, platinum standard for how things should be written when it comes to rules. They have spent, for Magic, I can't even imagine the amount of time and money to get the way they phrase things nailed down so specifically. And there are cards in this and in the original game that it's not entirely clear what you're supposed to do. I'm hoping the rules here are a little bit tighter. Regardless, the game is still absolutely playable. People have been playing it for a decade, literally now, and I think if you have liked the old stuff, you will really like this, and you'll like having access to new characters. It's also cross-usable, so if you have Sentinels of the Multiverse and you want to use some of these characters with it, you can do that, and vice versa. So you can bring Sentinels of the Multiverse characters over into this Mutants and Masterminds Earth Prime setting of cards. I think that's good. I think that's everything. I kind of went over what I wanted to. Let me know what you think. I am looking forward to playing this a whole lot. I would love to hear what all of you think. Check out Sentinels of Earth Prime. Pick it up. It should be available from Green Ronin. It should be available at game stores very soon. And it should be available online also very, very soon if it's not already. Thanks very much, and stand by for adventure.